that, I think it would have to be said, is a response that is valuable in certain circumstances and not necessarily valuable in all. And therefore, I think this kind of approach is suitable and valuable where current modes of operation or responses are for some reason no longer delivering a design response that meets new challenges or new demands. Now, then you'd say as a business model, you're putting in more than is actually required or asked for. And that doesn't make a great deal of sense. So you're doing it where you really believe that that's going to be valuable, yet at the same time, as you've observed, we are competing in a marketplace where there are kind of fixed costs. And you can't say to a client, well, what we do is going to cost you 3 times as much as these other incredibly competent people with a lot of experience. So we're, of course, the obvious choice. Yeah. So one has to find a way of keeping one's costs competitive. And you hope that the outcome is that the difference will be so obvious to anything else, so obviously noticeable to any other kind of output in the marketplace that people will say, well, that was worth it, that was worth the time, and that was worth, and here's a new kind of way forward. I wouldn't necessarily describe our business model as being one that as yet necessarily is designed to optimize on the outcomes of the research and the work that we've done. I guess we're hoping that where it's clear that we can actually make a difference and that difference has come about through the prototyping and the research, then we begin to build a kind of practice that attracts people for whom that makes a lot of sense.
There's also a position that you have to take vis-a-vis your clients, which is that you have to sort of take your clients on a journey. And once they've gone through the journey and they're very suspicious in the beginning, and then at the end of it, they're sort of turning around saying, I was really worth it, as you said. But you've also encountered situations where these people in these companies keep moving. They get jobs in other places and they go off. And then when the next project comes up, the new person comes in. And added to the fact that they want to change the way their predecessor did things, they're also not willing to look at the old contractors or the old designers or something. So there is that risk that your projects, you can't have a consistent relationship with a client. And such a practice can only work if the client stays and doesn't move, or the people who work in these companies stay in those jobs and those positions and don't go away.
I think that's very true. And I think, if I can go back to that point we were discussing earlier, that this is again where the idea of communication becomes really critical. I think one of the things we've learned is that in contemporary business culture, and our work is 90% commercial, that the idea of the individual being the center of their own career rather than a long-term relationship with a particular company means that, of course, key personnel they churn over quite rapidly. And you can't therefore rely on a long-term meaningful relationship. They only last 5 years and then people move on. And I guess that's what we're currently attempting to address in this next phase of trying to refine our own particular design approach. How to communicate this ongoing process of research and prototyping and information that's generated and the narratives that underpin the design, so that it literally becomes embedded into the culture of your client. A kind of exchange boundary condition between us as a design consultancy and our client, where we literally enter into the culture of the company. And we no longer rely necessarily on individual contacts. And in our most recent work, we've literally begun to add a kind of viral component to our design engagement with that in mind. All bets are off as to whether in the long run it'll work, but it's our latest experiment in...
What is that?
Well, essentially in our current work, we rather than necessarily see the project as representing the particular defining boundary of our engagement, or that we're there to specifically resolve or respond to a particular problem. That once the door is opened, we start to make suggestions about cultural possibilities that design can bring to the table throughout the organisation. So we don't limit our conversations. We look to extend our range of conversations as broadly as possible and to proactively walk outside of the boundaries of what we're engaged to do, to proselytise, I suppose, what we see as the advantages of a particular approach, or our approach, and our interest in thinking about design.
It sounds mysterious.
Well, it's I think about communication. It's privileging the significance of communication necessarily over the remit of engaging in a specific design problem.
Fascinating. It's been lovely talking to you. Thank you, Michael Trudgeon.
Thank you very much, Sam. Thank you.